What if I told you that the modern world as we know it, its nations, economies, and even conflicts, was shaped by a single decision made by desperate explorers in the late 1400s? At the time, Europe stood at a crossroads. The world was vast and much of it was still unknown to them. Then, a handful of ambitious men, Columbus, Magellan, Vasco da Gama, set sail into the unknown, charting new worlds and changing history forever. What they discovered would set off the greatest movement of people, power, and ideas in history: colonization. But was this expansion an act of bold ambition or brutal conquest? Was it a story of innovation or oppression? The truth is far more complex than you've been told. Let's uncover the real history of colonization, one that shaped the world we live in today. The Age of Discovery wasn't just about finding new lands, it was about who would control them. In the late 1400s, European kingdoms launched daring voyages across uncharted seas. The leaders: Spain, Portugal, England, France, and Italy, each racing to stake their claim in the New World. But why? Why did nations risk everything, money, ships, and the lives of their best men, to sail into the unknown? The answer lay in power, wealth, and survival. The more land you controlled, the more resources you had. And in a world driven by gold, trade, and religion, dominance meant everything. What these explorers didn't realize was that their discoveries would spark centuries of conflict, cultural exchange, and colonization that would change human history forever. Today, colonization is one of the most controversial topics in history. Some see it as an act of violence, destruction, and exploitation. Slavery, stolen lands, oppression of native populations, these are the dark shadows that loom over Europe's expansion into the Americas. But is this the full story? Before you answer, consider this. 79% of Americans under 30 believe that white people are the historic oppressors. Schools and media often portray colonization only through its worst aspects. But colonization existed long before the Europeans. From the Phoenicians building Carthage to Alexander the Great's empire and China's expansions into Tibet and Mongolia. The truth is, history is not black and white. Was colonization purely evil, or was it a force of change that shaped the world in ways we don't fully appreciate? One myth needs to be shattered immediately. Europe was not struggling or desperate before colonization. By the 14th century, Europe had already bounced back from the Black Plague and was thriving in commerce, art, and technology. According to economic historians like Professor Stephen Broadberry, parts of Western Europe had a higher standard of living than Asia by the 13th century. Meanwhile, Islamic piracy had been pushed back, and European navies dominated the seas. With strong economies, unified religion, and technological superiority, Europe wasn't looking to escape hardship. It was looking to expand. But then, a single event would change everything. In 1453, the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople, the great Christian city of the East. This wasn't just a military victory, it was an economic catastrophe for Europe. For centuries, European merchants depended on the Silk Road, a trade route linking them to the riches of China, India, and the Middle East. But with the Ottomans in control, trade stalled, and prices skyrocketed. Europe faced a choice: become dependent on Muslim traders, or find a new way to the riches of the East. The answer: the ocean. This desperate need to bypass Ottoman-controlled trade routes launched the Age of Exploration. Portugal took the lead. Prince Henry the Navigator designed the caravel, a revolutionary ship that could travel vast distances and navigate treacherous waters. But no one expected what happened next: the discovery of an entirely new world. When Columbus landed in the Caribbean in 1492, he unknowingly set off a chain reaction that would reshape the world. The Spanish and Portuguese quickly recognized the potential of the Americas and moved in to conquer and claim these lands. But here's something many people forget: the Americas already had empires. The Aztecs and the Incas ruled vast territories through military conquest, tribute systems, and warfare. They were no strangers to imperialism. To the Europeans, conquering the New World was no different than past empires. It was just a new frontier. Religion played a crucial role in colonization. The Catholic Church saw the New World as a divine mission, a land filled with souls who had never heard the gospel. Missionaries sailed alongside conquerors, some seeking to protect natives, others determined to reshape civilizations. But was it salvation or control? Colonization wasn't just about land or gold, it was about power. Spain ruled through native elites, integrating them into its empire. The English and Dutch, however, displaced indigenous groups, building European societies on new soil. Was this an inevitable march of history, or something far darker? Not all expansion was for conquest. The French and Spanish sought to end Barbary piracy, a terror that had plagued Europe for centuries. By the 19th century, the conquest of Algeria and Morocco put an end to North African raids. But was it liberation, or another form of domination? Then there were the conquests that defied belief. In 1519, Hernán Cortés landed in Mexico with just 500 men. 2 years later, the mighty Aztec Empire lay in ruins. How? Cortés burned his ships, ensuring no retreat, but his greatest weapon wasn't steel, it was alliances. Thousands of native warriors, tired of Aztec rule and human sacrifices, fought at his side. Without them, victory was impossible. Slavery, too, was a complex reality. Many assume it was a purely European evil, but it existed across history, from Rome to Africa itself. Some European leaders condemned it early on, yet demand for sugar and tobacco fueled its rise. Ironically, Europe became the first civilization to abolish it, with British and French navies hunting down slavers by the 19th century. But the greatest catastrophe wasn't war or slavery, it was disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza ravaged Native American populations, wiping out up to 90% of them. Yet, this wasn't deliberate genocide. When the Black Death struck Europe centuries earlier, no one blamed China. Should history view the New World's epidemics any differently? Even today, history is rewritten. Catholic missionaries like Junipero Serra, who fought to protect natives, are branded villains. In Canada, claims of mass graves at Catholic schools made headlines, yet no human remains have been found. Were these tragedies or manufactured scandals? Yet colonization wasn't just destruction, it transformed the world. Trade routes connected distant lands, raising wealth and spreading innovations: steel, ships, firearms, new crops, medical advancements. Even in the Americas, centuries of tribal warfare ended under European rule. Empires rise and fall, borders shift, cultures collide. That is history, not a simple story of heroes and villains, but a force that shaped our world. Instead of judging the past by today's morals, we must understand it as it was, because only then can we truly understand the world we live in today.